Okay, word. Kaha. Who else? Tam. That. To. But. Anadritya. By neglecting. Paranuchintam. Transcendental thought. Rite. Without. Pasun. The materialist. Asatem. And the impermanent. Nama. Name. Kuryat. Will adopt. Pashan. Seeing definitely. Janam. The general mass of people. Patitam. Fallen. Vaitaranya. And Vaitarani. The river of suffering. Swakarmajan. Produced from one's own work. Paritapan. Suffering. Jushanam. Being overtaken by. Who else but the gross materialist will neglect such transcendental thought and take to the non-permanent names only, seeing the mass of people fallen in the river of suffering as the consequence of accruing, the result of their own work. Please repeat. Who else but the gross materialist will neglect such transcendental thought and take to the non-permanent names only, seeing the mass of people fallen in the river of suffering, is the consequence of accruing, the result of their own work. Srila Prabhupada's divine purport. In the Vedas, it is said that persons who are attracted to demigods to the exclusion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are like animals who follow the herdsman even though they are taken to the slaughterhouse. The materialists, like animals, also do not know how they are being misdirected by neglecting the transcendental thought of the Supreme Person. No one can remain vacant in thought. It is said that an idle brain is a devil's workshop, because a person who cannot think in the right way must think of something which may bring about disaster. The materialists are always worshipping some minor demigods, although this is condemned in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, verse 20. As long as a person is illusioned by material gains, he petitions the respective demigods to draw some particular benefit, which is, after all, illusory and non-permanent. The enlightened transcendentalist is not captivated by such illusory things. Therefore, he is always absorbed in the transcendental thought of the Supreme, in different stages of realization, namely Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. In the previous verse, it is suggested that one should think of the Supersoul, which is one step higher than the impersonal thought of Brahman, as it was suggested in the case of contemplating the Virat Rupa of the personality of Godhead. Intelligent persons who can see properly may look into the general condition of the living entities who are wandering in the cycle of the 8,400,000 species of life, as well as in different classes of human beings. Now, if the BBT would not have edited that, it would have read, intelligent persons who can see properly may look into the general condition of the living entities who are wandering in the, as well as in different classes of human beings.
Wandering into what?
Well, that's because part of the sentence was left out.
In the editing?
In the non-editing.
The non-editing. The original
non-re-editing, where they look for mistakes and correct them.
Yes. So, yes, there's the devil's in the details.
It is said that there is an everlasting belt of water called the river of Vaitarani at the entrance of the plutonic planet of Yamaraj, who punishes sinners in different manners. After being subjected to such sufferings, a sinner is awarded a particular species of life according to his deeds in the past. Such living entities is punished by Yamaraj are seen in different varieties of conditioned life. Some of them are in heaven and some of them are in hell. Some of them are brahmanas and some of them are mazas. But no one is happy in this material world. And all of them are either class A, B, or C, prisoners, suffering because of their own deeds. The Lord is impartial in all circumstances to the sufferings of the living entities. But to one who takes shelter at his lotus feet, the Lord gives proper protection. And he takes such a living entity back home, back to himself. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport to the Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd canto, 2nd chapter of the Lord in the Heart, text number 7. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. I offer my obeisances onto the lotus feet of His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, who has opened our eyes with the torch of knowledge, although they were shut by the darkness of ignorance. Ukam karoti vachalam pungam lingayate girim yakri patamaham vande shigurum dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Iswaram. By the mercy of the spiritual master, even a lame man can cross mountains and a blind man can see stars. A dumb man can recite poetry. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So it's interesting that this word pasum, which is very similar, if not the same as the Sanskrit for animal, is used to, is also defined here as the materialist. Because the materialists are just like animals in the sense that their whole interest is in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And they may do it quite sophisticatedly, like, having a whole college for training up leaders amongst warriors. And they may have very sophisticated weaponry that, depends on a lot of high-tech advancement. But still, after all, when it comes down to it, they're just defending, although many times they're attacking, but that's, part of defense. We generally defend ourselves from an attack, but defense may become so subcharged that the best defense is a good offense. So then, as soon as you think somebody is somewhat of an aggressor, a person or a group of people or a country may simply take out that entity just to, to subjugate a possible antagonist.
Then they give it a fancy name, preemptive strike.
Yeah. So, but that's, after all, it's all simply not much different than a dog or a snake, a different reptile, a different type of mammal. Same with sleeping. Human beings, we have extremely sophisticated beds to sleep on. No animal can press a button and, it gives them a certain elevation, it gives them a certain softness or hardness. They just make their bed and they lay down. Dog lies down on the floor. Sometimes you see Katie lying down in the wet grass in the winter, when the grass may even have dew that's frozen on it, frost. And there's Katie laying there. So they'll just lie down on the ground. After all, when you actually sound asleep, there's not a whole lot of difference. And the same with eating. We may eat in a very sophisticated way, whether it be, extremely healthy, where we only eat something that is proven to be of the topmost organic quality. And we may even be very particular about the grower. Or somebody may have to eat more cheaply, and you see that they're just buying, junk food. Or it could be simply an animal that's eating whatever his quota is. Sometimes they're chasing their prey. Everything is food and looking for food. I put up on my Facebook page this horsefly. I saw it get entangled in the spider's web. And then I saw the spider spin the web around him to the extent that he couldn't flap his wings no more in an attempt to break the web and get away. And then I saw the spider drag it off behind a gardenia leaf. And I guess from there proceed to suck its blood out, So that's life in the material world. Everything is food and looking for food. Those same horseflies, bite Krishna's cows to suck blood. They'll also bite us, they'll bite any mammal to get to its blood. But the little bitty spider, which was at least 4 times smaller than that horsefly, sucked the blood from that horsefly. So everything in this world is food and looking for food. Eating, mating, sleeping, and defending. Same with mating. We may do it in very sophisticated ways according to the Kama Sutra or according to, this material composition of sexual activity, or this psychological thesis on human sexuality. But when it comes down to it, do we enjoy any more than the dog and the cat? And certainly the dog and cat many times fight as much as the human beings concerning their relationships. You hear that if the female cat, for whatever reason, isn't ready, then you hear these really battle cries between the male and the female. At night, often you hear that. And, same for dogs. Prabhupada used to give the example of the mule or the ass. The male has worked hard all day long, carrying so many loads for its master, simply being promised some carrot that's hung in front of it while there's grass on each side of the road it could eat. And when it gets home at night, it simply attempts to have some sex with the female ass. And many times the female ass simply bucks him in the head.
I saw that in the dog.
So same with human beings. It's you have one person who becomes extremely passionate and is simply looking for some sensual satisfaction. And at that time, that's the last thing the other party wants, and it results in some sort of fight. And the possibility of even domestic violence charges and a whole intervention by government. But after all it is, when it gets down to it, is sex. So eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, or mating. whether it's sophisticated or not sophisticated, it's the same thing amongst the animals as it is amongst the gross materialists. So if our thoughts are just fixed in that animal way of life, then we have misused the golden opportunity, because our human brain has the possibility to read books like Srimad Bhagavatam. For unfortunate souls like ourselves, we may not have been able to read it prior to Srila Prabhupada, because the vast majority of us would have never learned Sanskrit, and if we did learn it, we would have probably never understood it. We would have maybe never have even gotten around to Srimad Bhagavatam, because after all, it's just one of 19 Puranas, which is, just a historical books describing ancient histories and Vedic civilization. And it's not even the cream. I mean, it is the cream, but it's not the bulk of the milk. So, people get absorbed in the bulk of the milk. They hear about Vedanta Sutra, or they hear about the original Vedas. Everybody wants to study the original. After all, Vishnu breathed it out. But it's very hard to understand things, without a bona fide teacher or spiritual master in that regard when it comes to the Vedas, to really understand the essence of it all. So we're fortunate by the grace of the spiritual master, the line of disciplic succession, that has come to teach us Krishna consciousness, and even put it into our own language. And even gave us the Sanskrit and our own type of lettering. Because most people, they can read in countries that force you to go to school for 12 years. Then people learn how to read. And so, because we can read a particular type of lettering, we didn't even have to learn Sanskrit lettering. And those 40 particular sounds. Instead, simply whatever it is, 26 letters and whatever the amount of sounds it is with the English alphabet. All we had to do was simply, learn how to recite the Sanskrit in a certain meter. Or to simply read it and to look at word for word meanings. And not only that, but Prabhupada even created a whole society where we could do it within a society of devotees and learn how to do it in a way that even many Indian people who, because they can read Hindi, like we can read English, it's written in the same letters as Sanskrit. So they can generally distinguish with the Sanskrit letters, or at least the sounds. They may not know the meanings, but they'll know the sounds. So they may not even be able to know that we're reading it from Romanized letters because of Prabhupada's International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Whereas if you try to do all this on your own, how far can you possibly get? It's very difficult. So the human brain has given us the opportunity to do this. But if we all would have just floundered in the material world, all we would have been doing it throughout our whole life is Prahlad Maharaj gave the analogy. All we would have been doing is chewing the chew. Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Always trying to make it perfect. But after all, it's so foolish. How perfect can it become? I mean, you pass a certain point and you're older and you're still competing with younger people. No athlete can do that. They have to play with people their own age, or they'll get killed, practically speaking, playing with younger and stronger people. But yet, we all keep trying to do what younger people may get by doing, but certainly the older person, should have an understanding that the human brain is meant for more than just repeating these materialistic activities that may be so powerful in one's youth. In Prabhupada's teachings, he taught us that we should always be prepared to remember Krishna. We should always be trying to remember Krishna, because we cannot be sure when death will come in this material world. I mean, just yesterday I'm driving back from New Orleans, and the whole I-10 gets closed down because some motorcyclist on the high-rise that goes over the industrial canal in New Orleans was killed. And all the police going out of New Orleans, that means going east, you can see them standing at the very top of the high-rise with all the traffic completely cut off way back before you even get to the top of the high-rise. Not just to the top, but to the beginning of it. So the whole high-rise is vacant. There are the police up there. And later on I found out it's because a motorcyclist was killed and they have to do an investigation to find out who's wrong. But ultimately it's destiny. It's still, someone's going to pay, either the motorcyclist himself or the person that's held liable for it. And then you'll have maybe one death and one negligent homicide, possibly, where someone goes to jail for a large amount of time, despite what his circumstances were. Unless he was so rich that, like Ted Kennedy, he can pay off so many people that even though someone drowned due to negligent homicide, you still get off and are allowed to become a senator of a state of the whole country. So that's the nature of the material world. It's not a place simply meant for eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Ted may have had in his heart simply the desire to enjoy it. He definitely did. He simply wanted to be happy. And so did the other person in the car. But one died and the other had to face shame. Because that's the nature of the material world. And we keep chasing around this animalistic activity. For the animal, it's one thing. That's all the animal can do. The animal cannot sit in Srimad Bhagavatam class. The animal cannot read. The animal cannot chant. They have to have their animal life. And it's meant for them. The human being can have both. But the emphasis as a human being has to be on the spiritual side. Because that's our Pacific prowess. We can put an end to misery, whereas the soul in the animal's body, he has to wait till he becomes a human being to put an end to it all. Because otherwise he can't understand it. He can't understand that people are suffering in Tibet. How can Katie understand that people are suffering in Tibet? Katie doesn't even understand that the cat she has maliciously hunted and killed is suffering. That's the extent of its brain. It's just food and looking for food. There's no karma. There's simply a life of animals. But a human being, they can understand that if I cause harm to a never-living entity, they suffer. And so therefore, I should walk gently. Like Lord Chaitanya has taught us. Why else would in this material world where you have to be, armed and ready to defend yourself, why would someone, want to be more tolerant than a tree? Like Lord Chaitanya teaches. Only because we're not the body, and the soul can be elevated by pleasing God, by making God happy. It's God who has an interest in seeing human beings behaving more tolerant than a tree. And seeing human beings behaving in a way where they're not finding fault in others, but they're seeing fault in their own self. And seeing that, and feeling that. Look, they use the word feeling in Sanskrit, sunichena. I'm feeling lower than straw in the street because I know my faults. I don't have to go question other people. I should have, throughout my life, have understood how, all the faults of myself and not just sit around thinking how great I am. And so therefore, it becomes easy to feel myself lower than straw in the street. But the straw, what does the straw in the street do? When there was draft animals, they used straw to cover the dung that fell in the street. So lower than straw in the street. We should feel ourselves and more tolerant than the tree. And not be puffed up, no false prestige, but ready to give respect to others, because after all, we should see others as spiritual beings. If we can see a dog, a soul in a dog's body or a cat's body, then we should be able to see the soul in a human being's body. Despite their idiosyncrasies and their particular modes of nature that influence them. You know, that is the type of mentality that pleases Lord Chaitanya. It pleases him so much, he'll make it easy for us. For what? For enjoying the material world? No, for going back home to Godhead. But how? By chanting Krishna's name. Otherwise, I may be a great vocalist, but I may have no taste for chanting Krishna's name. I may be a devotee, but I may get so tired of chanting Krishna's name, I have no taste for it. I mean, that's generally a lot of us. I mean, I don't have any great taste for chanting Krishna's name. I practice bhakti yoga because, you know, that practice helps us. But part of that practice is that I do try to feel humbler than straw in the street. And I do try to be more tolerant than a tree. And I do try to not expect everybody to show me a lot of respect. And at the same time, I do make a practice of trying to be respectful to others. Then Lord Chaitanya says, Kirtaniya Siddhari. You'll always be able to chant the holy name in that state of mind. But if our state of mind is arrogant and, you know, conceited, you know, harsh, ignorant, angry, then it's very difficult to chant the holy name all the time. You know, one has to get to a certain state of mind. And that may take, you know, a little time, and then one can chant. But as soon as we give up the chanting, we go back to that former state of mind, it's very difficult to chant. So it's a practice. It's a practice for neophytes. It's a practice for beginners. It's a practice for everyone. In fact, Krishna says, until we can become completely free from doubt and completely absorbed, you know, body, mind, and intelligence in serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then, you know, we should practice bhakti yoga. You know, because we can't be at that high level doesn't mean that we give up the worship, we give up the practice. No, it's a practice. One has to follow then regulative principles of practice. That's why we say, you know, that there's a certain regulation that is given in the ashram for people to practice. There's, you know, a general regulation that's there, and then there are a lot of custom-made ones that are dealing with the situations of individuals and also the stages they're at. You know, so they have different types of schedules and opportunities, but there's a practice. And whatever one's practice should be, they should be doing their best to follow it. But Krishna is so kind that he says there are people that it's difficult for them to do that. And so therefore Krishna says, please take the opportunity then and just work for me. Because most people are going to work anyway. So Krishna says, work for me. You know, do it for me. You know, you're going out making money, then make money for me. Bring it back and then, you know, and give it to the Brahmanas, give it to the Vaishnavas, and let them engage in my service. You know? Use, just like that Sridhar, Lord Chaitanya's associate. He was a real poor guy. And he made his living just selling parts of bananas, like plates and different parts they use for food. And he would sell that and make some profit. He would buy it wholesale, sell it retail. And that's how he made his living. But he would take 50% of what he made And he would use it in the worship of the Ganga. Because if you go to India, many times they have these elaborate worship ceremonies for Mother Ganga. I mean, just a bunch of lamps, and many times big lamps that takes a grown man, 2 hands to hold and turn, and they got like maybe 50 to 100 big ghee wicks on it. And you have thousands of people putting little leaves with a lamp in the middle of the leaf, putting it in the Ganga, and they're all floating down the Ganga, and you have a chorus of brahmacharis, singing praises, and you have choruses of ladies singing praises to Mother Ganga. So this devotee would give 50% of his earnings to worship Mother Ganga. Prabhupada said that also, give 50% to the Sankirtan movement. Devotees have analyzed it to read profit because most of it is barely make enough money to pay the rent and utilities and buy food. So therefore, how could you give 50%? You wouldn't be able to keep a roof, or it had to become a really small, beat-up place like Sridham used to live in. I mean, he was so bad, the only cup he had for drinking water had to have patches on it to hold the water. So, it doesn't matter how rich you are, it matters, how much we love Krishna. But the point that I wanted to make was that devotees will, take care of the basic things, and then, whatever's left there, they'll split it between their emergency fund and what they need for savings for their family, and then for the worship of the Lord, like that. So, just work for Krishna, Krishna says. And Krishna is so kind, and he said, even if you can't work for me, then, try to be renounced, because that's better than meditation and knowledge. First he said, try to engage in meditation and gain knowledge, because that will help you. But if you can't do that, then, better than all that is renunciation, because that will make you peaceful. So, Krishna, he wants people to advance in life as a human being. But those who are demoniac, or those who are simply grossly materialist, Krishna goes on to call them foolish. Because there are many good people who are foolish. They want something so bad, and Krishna's going to make them wait for it. Krishna's going to be interested in them going back home to Godhead. So he may not reward them exactly the desire that they want immediately. So they may give up the worship of Krishna, and maybe they just never perceived it in this life. And they'll take to the worship of Ganesh, or, Mother Durga, or whomever it may be, Surya Dev, Chandra Dev, so many. And in order to fulfill those desires very quickly. In our next chapter, Sukadeva Goswami lists a whole bunch of devas one can worship for various reasons. And to think that deva is fulfilling my desire independent of Vishnu is an offense. If we understand that the deva is fulfilling the desire in relationship to Krishna, then at least we're doing something in knowledge. And it may be to support our service, like Yudhisthira Maharaj. Yudhisthira Maharaj was a Kshatriya king. Kshatriya kings had to feed Brahmins that come and ask charity from them. That's the rule. If not, there's ill karma. So when Yudhisthira Maharaj was banned to the forest, he no longer had a big treasury. He was no longer collecting taxes from citizens to have a big treasury. It was just him and his brothers living in the forest with not much means. But yet, because of who they were, many Brahmins were always knocking on the door. So how, Yudhisthira Maharaj was in anxiety. How am I going to feed them? So he worshipped the sun god. And the sun god rewarded him a pot that would always have food in it. One time Krishna did the same thing. He rewarded a king a pot to one devotee. And they brought it to the king, and the king said, what? It may not have been a king, it may have been somebody else, but they had to feed a bunch of people. And so it may have been a spiritual master, and the disciple brought him the pot.
It was a school teacher.
It was a school teacher. And so the school teacher said, what good is this pot? It was from a poor kid. What am I going to do with one little pot? I'm feeding thousands of people. You can make a little bitty subji in there, This is for thousands that were good. The pot fell over. And right before his eyes, the pot filled up. Wow, what a phenomenon. And that happened 2 or 3 times in different circumstances. Then it came around. This pot is special. So Krishna rewarded that kid a pot to give to his teacher that would always be full. So Krishna sort of likes pastimes like that, I suppose. So he rewarded Yudhisthira a pot like that, but through Surya Devi. Through Surya Devi, he rewarded him a pot. But Yudhisthira Maharaj, he understands all that. He himself is an expansion of the Deva Yamaraj, the Lord of Justice. That's why his natural proclivity was to understand law and order and justice. To like very, only people who are very conversant in the law and have able to really analytically understand it and apply it can assume big positions of justice. So, the Kshatriya kings in the days of yore, they had to play that role. They were like the topmost court. It wasn't worked out in smaller courts. Ultimately, had to come before them. And they had to have a really scrutinizing brain to figure out what was the proper application of justice in this particular case. So Yudhisthira Maharaj was naturally like that. So anyhow, it's 8:30 now, so we have to stop. Any comment or question before we end here? Okay, we have a meeting, so we're going to slip one out without further word. Srila Prabhupada, Ki
Yeah, I saw it. One time I was in the doctor's, I saw the foot, man take a big bundle